Welcome to Freaked Out with your co-hosts Liz and Landon.
What's up, everybody?
Today we will be covering the first part of Epstein's Island. We have quite a bit to cover when it comes to this particular case, and everything that happened is so complex and complicated. We're hoping to obtain as much information as we possibly can without sounding confusing.
Now, Liz and I have tried multiple times to cover this case in the past, but we've had to stop because Liz was just not comfortable doing this.
Oh yeah, we absolutely did stop quite a few times.
Would you like to tell us why you wanted to stop so much?
Basically, in a nutshell, there are a few reasons, but a lot is because of the affiliations with celebrities and government officials, and of course, the sex trafficking involved. And seeing and feeling all these women's energies surrounding everything they went through, all these young girls, it was extremely overwhelming, so we had to stop.
Now, I remember you saying you constantly kept hearing different types of screaming in your head. How are you going to be able to do this and handle that this time?
Very good question. What I'm feeling is that I'll be able to control it a little better this time because I'm going to handle it in a different way. Before I was trying to do too much at once, which is why we're doing a 3-part series. First, we're going to dive into Epstein, obviously, and his death. The second episode is going to be in relation to the victims, everything surrounding the victims, and I could possibly include some unnamed victims, definitely the sex trafficking. And lastly, the third part is the pretty scary one. It's going to be discussing the government officials, celebrities, basically who I've seen involved in 2 incidents in this particular island.
Now, have you experienced any of that this time?
No, thankfully, but I haven't started on the victims yet. But the amount of information that was coming in on loop was an overload. I had so much information that just flooded me, and I've had a hard time with my energy this week, not gonna lie. I keep seeing so much information and it keeps getting deeper and deeper and scarier, and I'm just blown away by all of it, honestly.
Well, this episode may be a little intense for those of you who struggle to hear, or maybe a bit intense for those who struggle to hear certain details. It will also talk about some underage victims, so please be advised that this episode is definitely not for children in any capacity.
On August 10th, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his jail cell after his arrest on sex trafficking and conspiracy charges. There are lots and lots of people out there, including myself, that did not feel like Jeffrey Epstein had killed himself. And today we're going to try to get down to the bottom of this.
Absolutely. Now, the officials had ruled his death as a suicide,
which would be considered believable because of everything he was, about to endure in an upcoming trial. But also people were afraid that Jeffrey Epstein was going to start talking, and that is exactly what everyone was trying to avoid.
He also had written a change in his estate only 48 hours prior to his death.
And we'll get back to that part a little later.
For those of you who haven't heard much or haven't really looked into this too much, there is a few documentaries you can watch, which are Surviving Jeffrey Epstein and Who Killed Jeffrey Epstein. You can watch for references to this if you'd like.
We will explain as we go along, but if it gets confusing, please take a listen to those documentaries for better information.
Jeffrey Edward Epstein was born on January 20th, 1953. He was an American sex offender and financer. Epstein, who was born and raised in New York City, began his professional life by teaching at the Dalton School despite lacking any college degree.
Epstein started working there in September of 1974 as a physics and mathematics teacher for teens on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Now, right away, I automatically feel like he wanted to be a teacher so that he had access to young females. I see that this was a goal of his at a very young age.
And what better way to have access to kids than being a teacher?
By the way, Jeffrey has come through a bit today.
Wow, has he?
Yeah, he's a very eager beaver when it comes to telling his side of the story. He doesn't care who he outs, but I also got to be a little careful.
I mean, absolutely. We're the ones who are still alive.
Tell me about it. Now, right off the hop, he wants to talk about this. When he was 15 years old, he had sex with his first girlfriend. Looks like she was Farrah Fawcett looking. She was obviously much younger. He described her in the most disturbing way. But basically, he said that she was his perfect type.
Does he have a name for this girl?
Swirling around in my head, Deborah. Apparently, he had sex with her for about 6 months. And then the father caught him and, basically chased him out of the house with a gun. And dude never looked back. He said that he had many girlfriends after this, some older, but it wasn't the same. And having sex with minors was something he said he apparently fought hard against, but wasn't able to fight the urges. I mean, okay.
Absolutely, that's just sick. Well, I hope he isn't around the whole time today. He's pretty creepy.
He's only allowed as far as Eileen lets him. She's kind of got him in a headlock situation. The only reason I agreed to kind of speak with him technically is because he's pretty submissive to Eileen's questions. So she's kind of like an interpreter. So it's not connected to me, and he'll stay away. So I've got a lot of protection around me.
Well, that makes sense and everything because, Epstein liked younger girls, and Eileen, with her backstory, being a girl who was passed around by her family and whatnot, and now she's coming back as this badass.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely makes me feel a little bit better. But
Yeah.
Now let's get back to Epstein's story here. Now, he did not have the appropriate education background, as we talked about, no degrees whatsoever. But Donald Barr, however, who served as the headmaster until June of 1974, was known to have made several unconventional recruitments at the time, although it is unclear whether he had a direct role in hiring Epstein or not.
Well, apparently he said he really knew his way around schmoozing. He also promised things about meeting famous people. He said he would tell this guy, hey, I'm part of the Manly Man Club, and that he was trustworthy. And that's how he went about getting the job. And oh my God, he looked like he came right out of Saturday Night Fever. And this is the persona that Eileen showed me. This is what he walks around the plane looking like. He's got this big mullety thing and total 70s clothing, like a weirdo.
Well, he must have been, obviously. I'm feeling like Donald did, in fact, hire him directly. And I believe that he didn't care about the educational requirements or anything for that matter.
I 1000% agree with you on that. I really feel like Donald and him may have smoked a cigar and congratulated him on his very quick success in obtaining this job. Also, Donald was going to be leaving anyway, so he said, screw it, and hired him.
Now, 3 months after Barr's departure, Epstein began to teach at the school. Shocker. Now, despite his lack of credentials, Epstein was known for having a charismatic personality and treating his students more like friends than their teacher. Shocker.
Yeah, it's really the predator motto. And I'm not saying that about, all teachers, but predators in general are usually best friends with their students. And he shows me that he would let them screw off with their homework. He didn't really do any lessons, mostly would talk about himself and his goals and how, he would want to rub shoulders with this person and that person and who he's met in his life. And basically teaching them his method of, what he planned to do to obtain a successful career.
Well, that was until he started to get too comfortable. Now, as his time progressed, he also allegedly showed inappropriate behavior towards underage female students at the time, paying extra constant attention to them, and even showing up at a party where they were all drinking underage.
Yeah, he said that he would get invited to these parties because they would want him to bring the beer. Now, they didn't think he'd actually stay, but he would bring the beer and then he would say, hey, well, you owe me a favor. And, him and his favors. That's when all of a sudden nobody wanted to be around him anymore. And they started to, tell everybody about his creepiness.
Yeah, that's because he's gross. Now, this pedo makes excuses for all his wrongdoings.
Another former student also often saw him flirting with females. I believe this is when things got a little bit too concerning, but they didn't fire him based upon that alone. They let him go in June of 1976 and was basically let go because of his poor performance. He had made friends with a guy named Alan Greenberg at the time. Alan felt bad for the guy, so he offered him a job at Bar Stearns.
Well, he did get involved in banking, and he started as a low-level junior assistant on the trader floor and worked his way up. We don't want to get too much into this financial side of things, but basically this guy climbed up the ladder and was able to make tons and tons of money and became richer than I could even imagine, Like, why are we giving all this money to these people?
But no, really, why?
I need this
Let's
money.
make sure that the evil people get all rich and shit. Like, what the hell? He definitely frauded people along the way, but that's a different story for another day. We want to solely focus on the crimes involving sex trafficking.
Absolutely. Now, Epstein started to approach women in a bit of a hierarchy. He would ask women, and when I say women, I mean young girls that are no older than like 14 years of age. He started to hire girls to give him massages, and he would pay them $200.
Yeah, he said he didn't learn that on his own. He claimed that this was actually how a lot of sex traffic rings would start. He shows me that although there were a lot of properties in the USA and the Caribbean, he would, go overseas and he would learn from the best. Before he started getting his own girls in his own country, he would hang out with a few kings and princes, and they would ask him, hey, what kind of gifts would you like me to bring you? And he would ask, I like young women. I like them young. And these guys would set up this massage room for Epstein with these younger women.
So this was basically not his original idea.
Oh, yeah. And he basically shows us that he never felt so alive. God.
So where did he meet Ghislaine at?
He shows me that he met her in England, and he shows me they had both been on the same path of what they wanted. Something happened that he never expected. I think somebody set the two of them up on like a blind date, and something pretty crazy happened, actually.
What was that?
He was attracted to a woman who wasn't a child. She was someone who he was very sexually attracted to because she was dominating, and he has heard around that she was a rock star in bed from his other creepy friends.
Well, that was definitely a first for him.
Yeah, he felt like he could tell her just about anything. He told her his deep, dark secrets, including his attraction to underage females. She said she found him charming. And apparently these girls, most of them, would say no or be grossed out, but he would enjoy that too. He also didn't like the ones who would hit him, though, and there were a few victims that hit him as well.
Which is definitely what he deserved. Something is definitely just bothering me here about him.
What would you like to know?
Well, how the hell isn't this piece of shit in hell? Like, why hasn't some dark thing taken him?
Eileen kind of explained it as unfinished business. He's refusing to go yet. I don't think he has much time left. Eileen explained to me that depending on the severity of the crimes, they're giving him some time for his unfinished business. So he's one of those that are going down with no chance. He's definitely going.
Well, thanks for that. Well, I'm sure everyone else was wondering that too. Now, is this when it all started with this hierarchy thing where they would choose who they would, promote and discover what other females were out there?
Yep. He even approached celebrity friends of his as kids. Actually, there's quite a few blonde hair, blue eye, really rich girls getting all the money, and everyone's always jealous of them, but they've been victims quite a few times. But anyway, he would set up like the interviews, like they said in the documentary, and they would base it upon who they felt like most submissive, who they felt most dominating. He would categorize them and then give them jobs based upon what they would look like. That's how it started.
So basically they position it like these girls who were already involved with doing these massages were like to their friends that he was a nice guy and he was just had a really nice house and you get to make $200. Now, making $200 when you're 14 years old, who isn't going to want to take that opportunity,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I know myself personally at 14 years old, $200 was so much more money, especially back then. You were rich.
Absolutely. Now, the address of the waterfront mansion is 358 El Brio Way in Palm Beach, Florida. The home was built in 1952 and Epstein had purchased it in 1990. And we definitely want to go there one day and just maybe get outside of it and maybe not go inside, but at least outside and see if there's something we can feel or anything and post that on our YouTube channel.
Absolutely, and we'll give you guys those details as we go along.
Now, when it comes to the minors, when they would bring their new female friends, they would just, walk into his house, set up the massage room, and then wait for Epstein to arrive?
Yeah. Now, this was like a revolving circle. I see he would have like 3 or 4 rounds of different girls coming at different times, like 2, 4, 6, like messed up. Anyways, I'm even seeing that there were things that went horribly wrong there too. One girl started to get really traumatized that she ended up going to the washroom, and there were a lot of girls there that day. And I think she might have killed herself right in the washroom.
Wow. How did they handle that type of situation?
Well, we'll also talk about that on the second installment about the victims, including some missing kids. And I feel that are really attached to this sex trafficking ring. There's like a chart, and I have to start writing it. There's a lot. I can't even believe all the shit that we're uncovering, honestly. I can write an entire life series on this.
Well, I definitely remember when you started writing in the books, the Epstein was you already wrote 5-6 pages, handwriting, in just a few minutes of what you were feeling at the time.
Yeah.
Now, dude and his little counterparts are definitely just amongst the most fucked up.
Yeah. Now, this man has access to so much money, power. He knew that he needed to keep rubbing elbows with others. Looks like the elite would get together often and discuss their own perversions. They would sit there on a job well done with their brandies and cigars, sitting there and talking about their preferences of the ages they like, the gender, the color of their hair. Oh, God, you name it.
Again, why are all these people rich? These types of people. But that is definitely going to be something we're going to cover in the part 3.
Well, Jeffrey wanted to be part of the billionaire millionaire club. And what better way to do that than to get blackmail on each of his co-conspirators? Now, he did have a lot of surveillance in and out of his plane, even in the Caribbean island. Now, he would tell them he was not recording them, but then he would tell them, hey, I got a souvenir for you. And I think he would give them a CD wrapped up in a bow or something, like a real creep. And he'd say, oh, for the memories of what the island brought. And at this point, social media was around, but it wasn't as significant as it is now. He would tell them that he had a copy in case, somebody needed it. But it did make some of the government officials nervous. They trusted him because he was also equally as sick, and obviously they all had blackmail on each other. Although he had his own connections, Ghislaine introduced him to everyone else that was the classier, modest people.
Well, yeah, of course. Now she wanted to please him.
Yeah, I don't get that part, though. What's in it for her?
I agree. I don't know what's in it for her. It seems like she's the only one who gets kind of, screwed over in this situation because she's the only one who was arrested and she's the only one who kept her mouth shut.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, too. She may have been able to lose about 20 of those 30 years if she came forward, but I think she was scared for her life. Epstein must have been a warning to her as well.
I definitely agree. They definitely had to scare her in some sort of way, not to talk. This is what'll happen to you, Somebody did. Now, only 2 days after Epstein was arrested, the FBI did raid his place and they were able to find an Austria passport. Now, the passport was addressed to a crown prince of Saudi Arabia.
Yep, and that's kind of the same thing I was feeling earlier with him having connections to kings and princes and royal families. He loved the royals. Any royal, doesn't matter. He didn't care who it was. He wanted to be right up in there. Now, when I say I'm petrified to say these things, I really do mean it. I'm going to tread as lightly as I possibly can. We all know that Epstein obviously changed his will 48 hours beforehand.
Yes, and the money was to go to some sort of trust fund in an offshore account.
Right, but that was for a reason, though. Now, he is a very disgusting, perverted pedophile, but he's also kind of like an evil genius. He sensed that they were planning to kill him because everyone that he was close to and helped him previously, silently, they weren't helping him out this time. He knew right away that a hit was coming for him.
Now, a week prior, wasn't he just on suicide watch?
Yeah, but he tells Eileen that he didn't try to commit suicide. Someone tried to take his life the first time.
Oh, was it like that inmate that he had in there with him?
Yeah, there was an inmate who he did not like at all. Apparently this guy was like taunting him. And anyways, somehow, some way, again, Epstein schmoozed his way around it. And apparently he convinced this guy like, hey, whatever they're going to pay you, I can pay you more. And the guy decided to take the offer and let go of Epstein. And then they came up with their little story of saying that he tried to kill himself and that's why he called the guard over.
So who paid him?
The elite, the government officials, the Wall Street guys, the brokers, lawyers, powerful celebrity men. They all came to a conclusion that they needed to kill him. Some of them didn't necessarily know each other, but everyone who's anyone had seen everybody else at the Epstein Island, so they can all kind of like rat each other out. So they had to kind of get together behind his back and take care of business.
Unbelievable. Well, doesn't surprise me though.
I really don't want to name names totally yet, but there are a few things I'm going to explain and a couple of secrets being hidden. Either way, I can say this. I believe that once Epstein realized that they were coming after him, he reached out to his lawyers and his team and got all his affairs in order. Now, I don't think he would have been able to get this part of it done if they were successful in killing him the week prior. So because they tried to kill him previously, he was able to get away with communicating with his lawyers, which is why he did the change in his will. Now, he shows me that he has boxes upon boxes of evidence that he locked away. I do believe that this particular lawyers, I should say, his legal team, there's quite a few of them. There was one guy in particular who had like all of the dirty details. He paid him a little bit more. Anyway, he pulled that lawyer aside and he had said that, hey, it's time.
Time for what?
To reach out to one of his affiliates who has access to all the audio, video, and photos and documents. Basically information that could implicate many, many different people, including Donald Trump. And no, I'm not saying he's in as deeply as others are. And because of his position of power, he was afraid of what might be released because he had no idea what Epstein had on him or didn't have on him. Remember that interview that Donald Trump did on Epstein?
Yeah, he said he didn't like him too much.
Yeah, he didn't like him because Epstein called in a favor and Donald Trump declined. He sent Donald a little message beyond the grave as well, something about a little jailbird, a bird with like a black and white outfit on. I think it was sent through the mail, and that was his counterpart that sent that, by the way.
Wow, that's pretty intense.
He also did something else. Now, the person that has all the evidence is supposed to deposit some evidence here and there. And he has, in the past, certain images were surfaced. It was his guy, his henchman. Anyway, I'm not going to describe him because I think he needs to get away, you know what I mean? Anyways, but this person has been unable to do anything or post anything since Epstein passed away.
And why is that?
Because this guy is on the run. I believe the government, the elite, legal team, brokers, all of them, the celebrities, all of them were able to kind of figure things out. They met privately from time to time. And anytime this guy would post anything, they would kind of go after him. But he does have some hacking capabilities. But apparently the government have like hired the best hackers possible for this mission.
Which doesn't surprise me because, the FBI and everything and the government have all the power. Now, will this information ever get leaked?
I see that he will at least get something leaked. And I do feel like he wants to make it a good one because he has a good chance of being shot in the head with a sniper when they do find him.
Holy shit.
I know a lot of people want to believe he's still alive, but he really isn't. He's dead. The medical examiner who did the initial autopsy had followed orders of regarding to, hey, you need to say he killed himself, Other doctors, though, had indicated a few other things. There was one doctor that was also there and noticed that there was a fracture in the neck. He also noted that the strangulation lines were low, when in fact, if you've committed suicide by hanging, it's going to be, closer to where your neck is, like at the top there, because you're being held down. And I see his body over and over again, and it is definitely dead.
Well, this was a pretty secure prison, so how did they manage to do this?
Believe it or not, I feel like the guards that were working, and not just these two guards, by the way, all of them, they really did fuck around. And I see that it was, consistent issue. No one ever did checks on the prisoners because they were too busy being lazy or hanging out or shooting the shit. And of course, they would be sitting there talking about the fact that Epstein was just a few feet away, but no one really ever did what they needed to do. And they relied on that kind of behavior so that, these other people, like they're watching, they could get away with things, the higher-ups.
So was it anyone who had worked in the prison?
I do feel like a few people that worked in the prison were connected to this, but I'm seeing that they made one of the prisoners in the prison be the actual one to kill him. They gave him some really good privileges after the fact. He agreed, and they had very specific instructions on how they wanted him to die because they wanted it to look like a hanging. I don't feel like the person was the smartest. This person who worked for the prison let him out. Epstein knew exactly what was going to happen. I see that there was no sound coming from where he was. I see that Epstein did put up a bit of a fight, but this guy was a lot stronger. And I even see that this man that strangled him said something in his ear, something in a different language. I honestly think that this person that killed him may have been Spanish. He knew what he had done to little girls, so he had no issues with killing him. Very distinctive shaved head, pretty thick mustache. In his 30s, he actually doesn't have many tattoos, and I'm seeing as well that he had a long, long time in jail, so he wasn't going anywhere.
And obviously, of course, these cameras were just not working.
They were shut off, and a few others were shut off to appear as if, there were malfunctions everywhere.
I don't really care if the cameras were working or not. Like, if I worked in the prison and we had, the world's richest pedophile, which was such a high-profile case in jail, in the jail I was working at, I would definitely move him to, solitary confinement where, he's got eyes on him 24/7.
I agree. Makes no sense, honestly.
Okay, so to get this straight, there was an inmate and he was solicited by a worker from the prison, and the worker from the prison would just be considered a higher up?
Yeah, I don't feel like he was top of the prison, maybe like a VP, a secretary of some sorts. Definitely an older gentleman.
And so he got the orders from who?
He got the orders from the lawyer, and I believe the lawyer from the government. The FBI is also involved in there somewhere. The official's lawyer had some sort of badge of honor. He is a high-ranking lawyer that works as defense for the government. And when the defense of the government comes knocking, you don't say no. And it was done very discreetly. Lots of briefcases, documents, private meetings, underground. It seems like there was a lot involved.
So the elite basically consisted of all these higher-ups. Part of that elite is former President Donald Trump.
Yeah, he's only 6% of it, I'd say. But it's him and other guys. I feel like all these guys, some of them do, have shareholders as well, on Wall Street. Anyway, I definitely feel like the Clintons were involved as well. I also keep seeing a very wealthy family of brothers that are involved, some of which are celebrity status and some not necessarily to be, but definitely rich. I also see that there was some connection to other countries as well. A big hotel industry, a very famous last name. They all have big connections in this hierarchy. And there's even a couple of people in other countries as well, but they have a very small percentage, a 0.2 or something. But they also get some sort of say.
I definitely could see that.
I feel like the guards lost a chunk of time that night because they would have noticed something going on. I know, even in the most chaotic situation, they were paying attention to something. And I feel like this lost time, it could have been drug, maybe a memory flash. Who knows, but I see a big chunk of time for both of them gone.
So it looks like there's information at least that will come out at some point. Do you believe that any of these people will get into any sort of legal trouble.
The statute of limitations is going to protect these perverted psychopaths, but the reputation will definitely be ruined. They may even be charged with some sort of conspiracy or sex trafficking. I used to think Trump was going to get in some legal trouble here connected to this case, but I don't know, since he's got other legal matters going forward, so perhaps that's what I saw. But I do believe that this will be the nail in the coffin for him. I feel like his larger portion of his diehard fans were going to go away, and I feel like there will still be people rooting for him, of course, but a lot of them will kind of have shame in it and flip completely upside down, especially when it comes to the sex trafficking side of things.
I mean, I hope so. I'm sure he'll come on Twitter or something and give us an entire show about his feelings on the matter, even though nobody cares.
I was just going to say that he definitely is going to make it seem as though the evidence brought forward is fake and yada yada, photoshopped, so many other things, but he will lose credibility because it won't just be photos. There'll be like audio and video and stuff like that.
Which, you know, hopefully that happens. Now, is there anything else you want to mention?
I just want to mention as well that Epstein is just one small piece of this big puzzle, and he knew it too, which is why he had the people in his corner that he did for a very long time. And I see that he was probably one of the most openly pedophilish amongst his group. Everyone else was more discreet. He would do things very openly at times and knew a lot of the risks involved and, take them away because he felt like he was untouchable. I'm seeing that the first time around he was charged, I see that there was a favor called in to keep quiet, and even a few judges, maybe even a prosecutor, also part of this club. Although he is going to continue to sing like a canary, he and I are both disappointed that Ghislaine did not. I do feel like she gave some information, but it was very like hearsay versus substantial evidence.
Definitely pretty intense information for sure. So why was there so many sheets in Epstein's room?
They really went above and beyond to show that he was trying to take these sheets to make some sort of concoction for himself, make it look like he was in a rush. They were pretty pushy in making it seem like he overly did it, to put out the fake evidence. I am seeing that it was an inmate to have taken his own stash too, and perhaps even someone else's stash. He was given a lot of items to throw in there as well. I also keep seeing that he had a syringe in his pocket too, just in case Epstein got out of control. It was as if it was like a plan B to kill him. They just wanted to throw some air bubbles in his system.
He definitely had to have some sort of blackmail then, definitely, because why would they go to such lengths to kill somebody in such this crazy way? He definitely had dirt on them.
Oh, I know. I have fear about that on my end. I feel that some details may not totally make sense, but more and more information is coming, and I'll continue to share as much as I can with you guys.
Well, this was definitely very intense, but we did it now finally. Thanks, Liz, and thanks, Eileen, for being here to help and support Liz. You guys also. And we'll give you guys a little update. He hasn't tried to come forward or cause really any issues for us. Now, next week, guys, we will be covering the episode of Ryan Larson. Until next time, guys, stay freaked out.